This is Mrs. Wainwright's math class, Chapter 9, Lesson 7, Graph and Analyze Relationships. Today's learning target: by the end of today's lesson, you should confidently be able to say, I can write and graph ordered pairs on a coordinate grid using two numerical patterns. Let's take a look at example 1. Sasha is making hot cocoa for a party. Yum. For each mug of cocoa, he uses 3 tablespoons of cocoa mix and 6 fluid ounces of hot water. If Sasha uses an entire 18 tablespoon container of cocoa mix, how many fluid ounces of water will he use? Graph the ordered pairs connecting the points from the origin. So for any word problem, first I need to figure out what the question is asking me. So, if Sasha uses an entire 18 tablespoon container of hot cocoa mix, how many fluid ounces of water will he use? That's question A. We also have a part B here. It says graph the ordered pairs connecting the points from the origin, so we will have to do that as well. Let's go back into the question and see what we know. We know that for each mug of cocoa mix, he uses 3 tablespoons of cocoa mix and 6 fluid ounces of hot water. So let's go ahead and put that into a table. What makes this question different from the questions in lessons 5 and 6 is this last part underlined in purple that says graph the ordered pairs connecting the points from the origin. When it tells me to graph the ordered pairs, I can't make a table that just goes from what I know, which is 3 tablespoons of cocoa mix, to what I need to find out, which is how much water you would use for 18 tablespoons of cocoa mix. What I need to do, since I'm going to be graphing it, is I need to figure out every little section along the table until I get to my final end result. So let's see how we set that up. So I'm going to go ahead and make my table, and I know that for each mug, so I'll start with mug, we have a certain amount of cocoa that goes in and a certain amount of water that goes in to make the hot cocoa. I'm going to set this up as a nice big long table. Again, since I'm graphing, I need all of the ordered pairs up to the last one that I'm looking for. Make my table. And let's see, as I highlighted in yellow, it says each mug, and each mug is 1 mug. So I'll write down 1. For each mug, I used 3 tablespoons of cocoa mix, so cocoa is 3. And I used 6 fluid ounces of hot water, so the hot water is 6. Put a line there. I know if I go into my question, which is underlined in green, it says if Sasha uses the entire 18 tablespoon container of cocoa, so under cocoa I would need 18 tablespoons. I'll go all the way down to the end of my table, make a line, and under cocoa I'll write 18 because that's where I'm going to stop. And the question wants to know how many fluid ounces of water will he use. What I don't know for the 18 is the water, so I'll put the underline or the blank there. Now I can go back in section by section to fill out my chart. So let's see what I know. 1 mug uses 3 tablespoons of cocoa. So what do I do to a 1 to turn it into a 3? Well, it's getting larger, so I'm going to multiply it. So I say 1 times what equals 3. Well, I know that 1 times 3 equals 3. So my rule here from mugs to cocoa will be times 3. What happens if I have 2 mugs? Well, let's write the 2, make the line for my chart. So I say if I have 2 mugs, how much cocoa will I need? Well, again, the rule was times 3, and 2 times 3 equals 6. So I'll need 6 tablespoons of cocoa. How much water will I need? Well, I don't know what the rule from cocoa to water is, so let's go back to my first column and figure it out. For 3 tablespoons of cocoa, I needed 6 fluid ounces of water. So we needed to go from 3 to 6. Would that be multiplying or dividing? Since it's whole numbers, I would be multiplying. 3 times what equals 6? Well, I know that 3 times 2 equals 6. So my rule from cocoa to water is multiply it times 2, since 3 times 2 equals 6. Okay, so let's move that over into my second column. 6 times 2, that's the rule, equals 12. So if there's 6 tablespoons of cocoa, I'll need 12 fluid ounces of water. Let's see what we would have with 3 mugs. Write down my 3 and put down the line. Let's do the rule from mugs to cocoa. The rule is times 3. 3 times 3 equals 9. So for 3 mugs, I'll need 9 tablespoons of cocoa. How much water will I need? Well, the rule from cocoa to water is times 2, and 9 times 2 equals 18. I'll need 18 fluid ounces of water. I see an 18, but the 18 is in the water, and I need my 18 in my cocoa, so I need to keep going. Okay, so I tried 1 mug, 2 mugs, 3 mugs. Next thing I'm going to try in order is 4 mugs. Apply the rule, times 3. 4 times 3 equals 12. And let's apply the rule for the cocoa to water, which is times 2, and 12 times 2 equals 24. Let's try 5 mugs of water. We'll apply the rule, 5 times 3 equals 15, so that's 15 tablespoons of cocoa. Still not at the 18 I'm stopping at, so I'll keep going. Apply the rule to the cocoa, which is times 2, and 15 times 2 is 30. So for 5 mugs, I'll need 15 tablespoons of cocoa and 30 fluid ounces of water. Let's try 6. Apply the rule, which is times 3. 6 times 3 equals 18. Hey, there it is, 18 tablespoons of cocoa. So what am I going to do? I'm going to cross this part out, cross that empty blank out, and I will go ahead and fill in my last column of my chart. So we said that was 6 mugs, because 6 times 3 gives me the 18 tablespoons of cocoa. And I know the next rule is times 2, so I say 18 times 2, which I don't have memorized, so I'm going to use some scrap paper. 8 and 8 is 16, put down the 6, carry the 1, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So that gives me 36 ounces of water. And that was what this question asked me. If Sasha uses 18 tablespoons of cocoa, and here we are, my 18 tablespoons of cocoa, how many fluid ounces of water will he use? And here's my fluid ounces of water. So my answer to part A, if Sasha uses the entire 18 tablespoon container of cocoa mix, how many fluid ounces of water will he use? He will use 36 fluid ounces of water, and that's my answer for part A. But remember, there was a part B, that's why I made the whole big table. And part B says graph the ordered pairs connecting the points from the origin. So we'll need to move to some graph paper to do this next step. Okay, so I have my table in front of me with all of my information, and I know to make a graph I'm going to use a ruler for nice straight lines. So I need to make a y-axis, making sure I have room on the left of it for all of my labels. I will need to make an x-axis, making sure I have room underneath it for all of my labels. Of course, I put arrows on the end of my axes and label them. So that's an arrow for my y-axis with my y label. This is an arrow for my x-axis with my x label. I'm going to label my origin, which we know is 0. Since my question asked me for 18 tablespoons of cocoa, how much water do I need? I will be graphing just the cocoa and the water. Therefore, I'll cross out the mug section. So cocoa is the first part that I'll be graphing, and the first thing I see on my table is always my x-axis. Water is the second part, and the second thing I see on my table is always my y-axis. So let's go ahead and set up our x-axis. I see that the data I need is cocoa, and I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Let's label my lines. Remember, I do not label the y-axis line. We'll start with the first line after that on the graph paper, and let's set it up to see how this will fit. I can try with my pencil, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. That will work, but again, I think I have more room, so let me try doing it by skipping each line. Back that up and try it again. So I don't use my y-axis, but I always start at the next line. So it would be 3, skip, 6, skip, 9, skip, 12, skip, 15, skip, 18, skip. And that looks perfect. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and use. I'll erase my pencil marks and rewrite the numbers by turning my paper sideways. So I don't label my y, but I label 3, skip, 6, skip, 9, skip, 12, skip, 15, skip, 18. Now I need my title. I know my title is cocoa, but I'm not sure of the measurement, so I'll go back to my original problem to see. And it shows me 3 tablespoons of cocoa, so that's going to be cocoa in tablespoons. So I write down the x-axis title cocoa, and I put my unit in parentheses, which will be in tablespoons. So each of those numbers stands for tablespoons. Now I'm ready to go ahead and fill in my y-axis. Remember, for the y-axis, I have to find my scale to figure it out. So I look at all my numbers and I look for the smallest. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. 6 is my smallest. Now I look for the largest, which is 36. So my scale has to go from 6 to 36. That will be the scale. I need to make sure that I fit that in. Let's figure out what intervals I should use to fit that into the graph so I can see it nicely. And again, I'm numbering the lines, so let's plan it out and see. If I counted by ones, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'd never fit up to my 36, so ones isn't going to work. After ones, I try twos. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. I still won't fit my 36 in. Could I make a break? Well, not really, because my lowest number is a 6, and I wouldn't be missing much that way. So I'm going to have to go back, and after twos, if that doesn't work and I don't want to make a break since my numbers are far apart, let's try fives, see if that works. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Yes, I could fit it in by fives, so that's what I'm going to do. I'll erase my little lines, and I'll go back and number the lines by fives. Therefore, the interval will be 5. Remember, I'm numbering right on top of the line, so the number is going to be resting on the line. So I say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and I'll stop right there. Now I need to label my y-axis. I know it's water, but I don't remember the unit, so I'm going to go back to my original problem to find out what that is. And here it is. It says fluid ounces of water, so my unit will be fluid ounces. Remember, when labeling my y-axis, I want to turn my paper sideways so I can write it neatly, and I will write water, parentheses for my unit, which is in fluid ounces, and close the parentheses. So now my graph is all labeled and set up. I'm ready to go ahead and graph my data. So for 3 tablespoons of cocoa, I need 6 fluid ounces of water. Find my 3. With my finger, I would move up the line like this red arrow shows. Remember, don't put the red arrow, I'm just showing where it goes. And I need to get to 6. The only thing is I have a 5 and a 10. I don't have a 6. So I need to figure out where 6 should be. I know it's going to be someplace between 5 and 10, but I don't think 6 is halfway between 5 and 10. I think it's definitely going to be much closer to the 5, so a little bit above the 5, but fairly close to it, and that's where 6 would be. Okay, now for 6 tablespoons of cocoa, I need 12 fluid ounces of water. So I find the 6, move up with my finger. I don't see a 12, but I'll stop by the 10. 12 has to be someplace between 10 and 15. And it's probably about in the center between 10 and 15, so I'll make my dot right there. Next, I have 9 tablespoons of cocoa, so I'll follow that line up with my finger. I have to put the dot at 18 ounces of water. 18 is going to be someplace between 15 and 20, about halfway, if anything, a little bit closer to the 20, so I'll put the dot right there. Now for 12 tablespoons of cocoa, find the 12 line, follow it up. I need 24 ounces of water. So it's going to be someplace between the 20 and the 25. I know that 24 is pretty close to 25, so I'll put the dot right there. Next I have 15 tablespoons of cocoa, so I'll follow that up with my finger, and I have 30 ounces of water, so that's going to be right directly on that cross of 30. And finally, for 18 tablespoons of cocoa, I follow the 18. I need 36 ounces of water. That's going to be just above my 35. It looks like right there. So I've plotted all of my data points, and let's go back to the question and make sure I'm doing exactly what it's asking me. And that Part B question said, graph the ordered pairs, connecting the points from the origin. So I've graphed them, and I need to connect the points from the origin. The only time I start at the origin is if the directions tell me to, and this does make sense here because for 0 mugs of hot cocoa, I would use 0 tablespoons of hot cocoa and 0 ounces of water. So therefore it does make sense to start at the 0. And then I'm going to keep with a ruler line connecting dot to dot in the order that I graphed them in. Now again, I connected them from the origin, that's good. But it asked me to graph the ordered pairs, and when it's telling me to graph the ordered pairs, it is a good idea to label each of your dots. So my first dot was at 3, 6. Remember, an ordered pair gets put in parentheses with a comma between each one. The first number is your x-axis, which was the 3. Your second number is the y-axis, which was the 6. Then I have 6, 12. Then I have in parentheses 9, 18. This one inside parentheses is 12, 24. This one in parentheses 15, 30. And finally in parentheses 18, 36. Therefore, I have now completed everything the question asked me to do. Part A, if Sasha uses the entire 18 tablespoon container of cocoa mix, how many fluid ounces of water will he use? I have my answer right down here. He will use 36 fluid ounces of water. Part B, graph the ordered pairs connecting the points from the origin, and that's what I did right here. The only thing that looks like I'm missing here is a title. So let's see. This is all about mugs, cocoa, water. So it's really the amount of cocoa mix and water that you need to make hot chocolate. So I will title this graph Hot Chocolate Mixture, since it's the amount of mixture that we need for each item. And I will underline my title. I have now completed number 1. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Remember, there's lots of parts to this, and anytime they ask you to graph the information when you make your table, you need to make the entire table so that you have all of the plots to point in your graph. Go back and do your example with my example step by step. Okay, example number 2, it just gives me a chart, and it says, graph and label the related number of pairs as ordered pairs, then complete and use the rule to find the unknown term. So it's really just giving me 2 things to do. The first one is graph and label the related number pairs as ordered pairs, so I need to graph and label it. That's part A. Then part B is going to be then complete and use the rule to find the unknown term. That's part B. Since I have the table in front of me and I do know how to find the rule and complete the unknown term, I'm going to do that actually before I graph it. So let's take a look at this part right here. So my unknown term is right here in that empty box, and I know I have to figure out what do I do to a 5 to find out what my unknown term is, or what do I do to the drink mix to find out how many cups of water I need. So I'm going to go to one of the earliest ones in this table, which is the 1 to the 12. What do I do to a 1 to turn it into a 12? Well, I need to make it larger, so that's going to be a multiplication. So I say 1 times what equals 12. Well, I know that 1 times 12 equals 12. So I go back into my table, and if 1 times 12 equals 12, I can move to the end and I can say 5 times 12. And 5 times 12 equals 60, so my missing number will be 60. I just completed part B. Now let me move on to part A, which says graph and label this information, so I'll need to do this on graph paper. So I move my chart over with me. I have my graph paper. We know to make a graph I need both an x and a y-axis. I'm going to make my nice straight ruler line for my y-axis, making sure there's room on the left for all of my labels. I'll make my straight ruler line for my x-axis, making sure there's room underneath for all of my labels. I'll put an arrow in the end and label this the y-axis, an arrow in the end and label this the x-axis, and of course I'm going to label my origin. When I look back at my table, my first item is drink mix, that will be my x. My second item is water, that will be my y, x, y, as in the x, y, z order. So I see in my table that I see drink mix in tablespoons first, and the first thing I see in my table is my x-axis, I'll label that x. Water in cups comes next, and the second thing in my table is my y-axis. I'm going to label my x-axis first. I have the numbers 1 through 5. I've been doing this enough now that I kind of think that I have enough room to skip. So remember, I do not label the y-axis, but I always label the one after that. So if I did a 1 here, skipped, a 2, skip, a 3, skip, a 4, skip, and a 5, skip, yes, that would work well. So I'll back that up, turn my paper sideways, and label my lines. So again, I turn my paper sideways, I do 1, skip, 2, skip, 3, skip, 4, skip, 5, skip. My lines are labeled. This is drink mix in tablespoons, so I write drink mix. My unit is in parentheses, which is in tablespoons. So I know that each one of these numbers counts for tablespoons of drink mix. Now I'm ready to go ahead and label my y-axis. So again, when graphing my y-axis, I need to find my scale and my intervals. So to find the scale, I look at all of the numbers, and I find the smallest and the largest. That's what I'll have to fit into my graph. My smallest is 12, my largest is 60, so my scale will be from 12 to 60. Now, what kind of intervals can I use? I see something interesting here. When I look at my data for my y-axis, I see that I'm actually counting by 12s, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60. So I wonder if I could just make my scale 12s. Let's try it and see. Remember, I do not label my origin or my x-axis, so I start at the next line. 12, 24, 36, 48, 54, 60. Yes, I can definitely fit all of that in. But it kind of looks like it will be very squishy at the bottom portion of my graph. So I wonder if I can widen it up a bit. What if I did half of 12? What if I said 6? What if I did the intervals of 6? Let's go back and see if that would fit. So I have 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, 54, and 60. Yes, that just fits, but it does fit, and I think it will make it a bigger graph, and the bigger that I can make the graph and fit everything in, the easier it is for me to see the graph, understand it, and analyze it. So I'm going to use intervals of 6. Let's erase these and go ahead and number the lines. So I label my lines 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, 54, and 60. Now I need to give my y-axis a title. I see that it's water and the unit is cups. So I turn my graph paper sideways to write water. My unit goes in parentheses, and that would be in cups. Therefore, each number here stands for that many cups of water. The only thing I see that I have not yet done for setting up my graph is the title. Let's go back to the question and see what the title should be. And when I go back to the question, it kind of gives me a little bit of a chuckle, because it doesn't give me much information here at all, does it? It just says graph and label the related number pairs as ordered pairs, and complete and use the rule to find the unknown term. And then it gives me the table that says drink mix in tablespoons and water. So I really think it's drink mix compared to water. So let's go ahead and write my title. So I put the title at the top of the graph. I'm going to write drink mix with water. Remember, we capitalize first, last, and all other important words, and we underline our final title. Now I'm ready to go ahead and graph my data. So for 1 tablespoon of drink mix, I follow that up with my finger. I need 12 cups of water, and that goes perfectly on the cross line. Again, as a reminder, these red arrows are just to show you how you move up the line with your finger. You do not draw the red arrows or lines going up. And for 2 tablespoons of drink mix, I follow that line up. I have 24 cups of water, which again goes perfectly on that cross. For 3 tablespoons of drink mix, we have 36 ounces of water, so I follow the 3 line up and put the dot exactly on the cross for 36. 4 tablespoons of water, follow that line up with my finger. 48 cups of water, again right on that cross. And last but not least, 5 tablespoons of water, follow that line up with my finger. It goes at 60 cups of water, which is going to be right there. And again, my Part A directions said to graph and label the related number pairs as ordered pairs. So I've plotted all of my points. Now I simply need to connect all of my points using a nice straight edge ruler line. So I connect first to second, second to third, third to fourth, and fourth to fifth. And since it told me to plot my ordered pairs, I am going to label each of my points as ordered pairs, which goes parentheses, a comma between them, x goes first, y goes second. So my first point is at 1, 12. My next point is 2, 24. The next point is 3, 36. And the next point is 4, 48. And my final point is 5, 60. So I've now graphed the data and labeled all of my ordered pairs. Back to my question, I have completed part A. So let's double check to be sure. I graphed and labeled the related pairs as ordered pairs. Here they are. I have all parts of my graph labeled and graphed. And I completed and used the rule to find the unknown term. And here was the unknown term. Right down here, it was 60. So I have now completed example number 2. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. Remember, there's lots of parts of a graph. You don't want to miss any, so I recommend that you do it with me step by step with the video. And example number 3, my last example, something that you may be asked to do. I took all of this information on both the graph and the chart or the table from example number 2. It was the drink mix in tablespoons and the water in cups. This is the same graph that I just finished. And example 3 says, use the graph from example 2 to find how many cups of water are needed for 3½ tablespoons of drink mix. Well, I know here how many cups of water are needed for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I don't know how many for 3½ So I'm going to have to figure that out. Well, it's the drink mix that I'm looking for that I know, 3½ tablespoons of drink mix. So let me go down to my x-axis and find where 3½ would be. Well, 3½ is definitely going to be right smack in the middle of 3 and 4. So this would be my 3½ line. With my finger, follow that 3½ line up to my graph and see where it ends. Then I can look over at my y-axis and see how many cups of water I need. So again, since you can't see my finger, I'll use my red arrow, but you wouldn't be drawing on the graph, you would be using your finger. So I'm going to follow this 3½ line all the way up to my graph. That's where I would chart my point. And if I look over with my finger to the y-axis, I see that that is on 42. So 42 cups of water are needed for 3½ tablespoons of drink mix. And that's my final answer. I was able to find it on the graph after the graph was made. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 3 right now. So let's review. This lesson, lesson 7, is really a combination of lessons 4, 5, and 6. It's lesson 4 where you've learned to make a graph. It's lesson 5 when you've learned to make a table, figure out the rule, and complete a table, or even find the missing unknown number as we did here. And it's lesson 6 where we take information from a word problem to put all of this together. So it's kind of putting all of these lessons together. As always, we will continue practicing in class. If you have any questions or concerns, please be sure to see a teacher. We will sit down and work on it with you. Hopefully by now you can confidently say, I can write and graph ordered pairs on a coordinate grid using 2 numerical patterns. Good luck with this lesson.